Thank you and good afternoon. I've worked with earned value for about 12, 13 years now, first on projects that I was involved with, and then lastly introducing it to the whole organisation, which was Taylor Woodrow at the time. We introduced processes and tools to enable an earned value approach to our project controls, and we've seen real results both for ourselves and for our clients, and I hope to share some of those with you today. We've actually used earned value on over 200 projects in that period of time, so we've gathered quite a lot of data and results as well. Now, bearing in mind this as an audience, I'm guessing you'll range from perhaps never even having heard of earned value through to some expert users. It's quite a challenge to fit what I want to say into 20 minutes, but I'm going to start my discussion with a brief look at earned value, the background to techniques that went before earned value, and then earned value itself. And then I'm going to discuss why I think earned value is a vital tool for any construction project. Firstly, though, what is the philosophy of earned value? Well, it's a management tool. It's one of a set of tools that should be used to manage a project of any size. It's something that controls time and cost together, and hopefully in marrying the two together should improve the reporting of both, and in fact can actually save effort rather than cost it. Earned value tells you precisely where you are on a project, and it tells you where you're going. That is, where you're going if you can't do anything to change the course that the project is set on. It also suggests to you what you need to do to get back on course, but what it doesn't do is tell you how to get back on course. That remains the job, remains the skill of the project manager. So is it a software tool? Well, my answer to this is resoundingly no. In fact, other than the regular planning software that you'll use on your projects and existing cost control systems, all that's really needed is a spreadsheet solution to produce an earned value report. Now, if you're diving straight into introducing earned value on a major project, you may well decide to invest in some software, even some consultancy. But this is where you start to spend money. We've actually used a simple spreadsheet solution on projects ranging from under £1 million up to £500 million. And we've done that successfully and, as I said before, across the whole business. But for me, what earned value really is it's a way of thinking. And it's a way of thinking about work and what work really is. Work is not bars on a bar chart, nor is it a sum of money in a cost plan. It's usually about human effort, using resources to create a product or an output. It's best measured, therefore, in terms of man days, or since everything has to be paid for, in terms of money. So in summary, earned value is about a structured but common sense approach to managing projects. I'm now going to move on to look at some traditional ways of measuring performance on projects, and I'm going to assume knowledge of these, although this first one almost doesn't need explanation. It's so simple, and in fact that's one of its main advantages. It's very clear what's happening with this. We've got a bar chart, we've got a line marking where we are against each of the activities. Very simple to do and understand, and it very clearly identifies all activities that are behind and need some sort of attention. But it doesn't show the consequence of work running late, and it certainly doesn't give a strategic overview or even a package-by-package overview of where the project is. And it doesn't acknowledge change very well either. All in all, it's not a very good tool to manage the future in a proactive way, and it makes no forecast of future performance. So now we move on to networks and critical path analysis, which is an essential planning tool in my view, the best there is. So with networks we build up a critical path, and this does enable us to look into the future and assess the impacts of progress and events on our project. And it's not a tool that's replaced by earned value, indeed it's a complementary tool. It can be updated with events and delays, and indeed it can be used to demonstrate a delay. Critical activity can also be given priority, which may be seen as an advantage, but is a double-edged sword really. There's an inherent risk in focusing only on the critical path. A good programme is created with a logic that creates the critical path, but also looked at in terms of workflow and flow of resources. So the programme is produced is the most logical and the most efficient way of delivering the project. If the non-critical work is ignored and not given the priority, it'll often become critical at some point. And once it's done that, it's likely to be less efficient in delivering it, as we have to have big spikes in resources in order to deliver it. And of course, critical paths can change through the life of the project, either through progress or because of new methods. So they're often not constant. Having said that, I'd like to re-emphasise that critical path is a very useful tool indeed. Moving on to a method called activity weeks. This is basically counting the squares on a programme, and seems to be an advance in some ways on critical path in that everything is taken into account. Every activity has an equal weighting, and this is the inherent weakness of this method. If you consider an activity on a programme that talks about painting and decorating, it might have the equivalent of 2 men doing work in a week. There might be another activity for mechanical installation that might have 20 pipe fitters on it. Now, those two activities by this method have exactly the same weighting, whereas clearly there is far more work in one than the other. Typically, we found with this method that projects would be some 10 to 15% away from reality, would be reporting they were some 10 to 15% away from reality, and in some cases as much as 20% difference. Now, if you imagine a project where we think we have reached 50% complete, and we've spent 50% of the money, that sounds okay, but if the progress is only 30% and we've still spent 50% of the money, we have a massive problem on that team. And these sort of numbers I'm not making up, by the way. With that kind of situation, or being unaware of that kind of situation, there's nothing that the project team or the senior management indeed can do to sort the problem out. In addition, there's no way of forecasting this with this method or assessing the productivity that we're achieving. And I want to discuss what we do in terms of managing cost. I'm not from a commercial background, but I have to admit that these tools have been somewhat better, hopefully for obvious reasons. This is an approach that a lot of clients use, where a budget is set at the outside and costs are monitored as we go through the project. And that's fine. It's useful for drawing down funds in order to pay people. But when we start to use this for project management is where the problems start. This is a project that could be overspent. That's why the cost line is above the budget. Alternatively, we could be ahead of programme. We really can't tell. So with earned value, we tend to focus on this gap. This is the quantity of work that we haven't done that we should have done. When we think about this starts to represent what we need to do to get back on programme. That could be 10 more men we need to bring to the project. It could be 100 more people we need to bring to the project. But it gives us a scale of what we need to do to recover. And secondly, we have a measure of productivity, which is the comparison of what we've actually achieved with what we've used to achieve it. I'm not going to show it on this graph, which is probably already congested enough, but obviously the next logical step is to start projecting some of these lines into the future, and there are various formulae and ways of doing this. And they tend to produce, particularly when projects look like this, they tend to produce some challenging forecasts of where the project is likely to end up. And hopefully that demands attention. So, just turning to what the fundamental questions we need to look at are. What are the fundamental questions that a client asks, a business asks, perhaps a contracting business, and the individual project manager? Well, a client usually wants no surprises. He wants the thing delivered on time and to cost. And there may be a balance of those, but ultimately what a client wants is no surprises. From a business perspective, obviously, as contractors, we're in the game to make money. But other things which are slightly less obvious are also important to construction companies, maybe the cash position and certainly the turnover position. Those are the things that have to be actively managed. So what interests the project manager? Well, of course, he has to be cognizant of all of those factors, but in addition, he needs some detail, something to work with, so that he can take action to recover a situation. We've already discussed how a project tries to answer these points without earned value. Business and client reporting will tend to be an aggregation of the individual projects using the techniques I've talked about.